Yeah. Yep. All right, we are live, everybody, and recording.
All right. All right, we're gonna go ahead and get started. So I'm gonna call the meeting to order at 6:31. And the first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda, and we have one addition to the agenda. Moving forward, we're gonna have to get used to adding our second, depending on how long our first public participation goes. Per our new public participation policy, we're gonna add a second public participation. So we'll put that after the consent agenda. So before any non-publics. So that will be dependent on if our first one goes less than 30 minutes. So if our first public participation is less than 30 minutes, we will add a second opportunity for public participation at the end of the regular meeting. So that's our first thing to change on the agenda. Any other changes or additions or anything like that we need tonight? Okay, so we need a motion to approve the agenda as amended.
So
All right, so I have a motion from Denise and a second from Ed. All those in favor say aye. Aye. And any opposed say nay. All right, perfect. So we will open for public participation now. And just a reminder, for public participation, you can participate here in person or virtually. If you're here in person, we just ask that you state your name and address in the beginning of your comments. If you are participating virtually, we ask that you do the same thing, just type that into the beginning of your comment. So your name and your address, so that can be part of your comments. And you're welcome to use the chat to go ahead and add any public participation that you might have. And so I will take a look and see what time it is that we're starting it, and we'll keep track of how much of our public participation we use now. And so if anyone would like to make any comments or anything, please feel free.
Recording in progress.
Hey. Oh my, she didn't get my visa. Here.
didn't come. It didn't come right.
We're waiting for public participation. All right, I'm just gonna give it one more minute and then we will see if anything has come in. That's why we have that extra chair. Perfect.
I guess this is where I would say that I'm glad they didn't stick to that strict 30-minute rule.
Yeah. Yep.
Yep.
All right, we will go ahead and move on to our next agenda item, which is our student school board liaison.
All right, let me move Ellen in.
Excellent.
Welcome, Ellen.
Hi.
Hi, Ellen. So if you want to just give us a quick update on how the year is going for you, anything in particular that you think would be of interest to the board that's happening up in Lebanon, we'd love to hear about it. And if there's any other comments or questions or things that you've heard that you think the board should know about, that would be great.
Yeah. Kind of a busy time of year. The early action, early decision deadline is today for colleges. So a lot of seniors are stressed right now. It's also the transition to kind of the winter sports, so like swimming, basketball, wrestling. I guess also flu shots were open today, and kind of going into that, I feel like there has been a spike in COVID in the school and like a spike in sickness, which generally just comes around at this time of year. But I know several people who have COVID right now, so yeah. And also, can you guys hear me? Screen is glitching out from my end. Can you hear me?
I was just gonna try and do the remote volume thing, but it's up as high as it can go.
Okay, she said our screen was a little glitchy.
Okay.
Is it? We're just looking at things on our end. We can hear you okay. If you have other things that you wanted to, yeah, go ahead.
I guess I just had one more thing that I put in the weekly in the LHS weekly, like kind of an advertisement for a new liaison from one of the underclassmen grades. I also had Bonnie send out an email to those grades, prior Grantham students. Yeah. So
Thank you.
that's it.
Does the board have any questions? Okay, have you heard anything at the school? I don't know if there's been any conversation at the school or amongst the students or anything about the superintendent search that Lebanon is having. Has there been anything that's kind of come to the students yet about that?
I have not heard anything about that, no.
Okay. All right, that would be interesting if at some point you hear, something about either student involvement or input, or if, there's other things that come up as Lebanon heads into their superintendent search, we certainly would love to hear about that. Lebanon, Grantham, and Plainfield are all going to be doing superintendent searches. And so I think it's going to be a lot of interest in that area. And I think moving forward, we're going to be talking about what kind of community involvement we'll have in that process. And part of that will definitely be looking at, parents and also student involvement. So if you hear anything about that at the Lebanon school level for their search, we would be interested in hearing about it.
Yeah, I haven't heard anything yet, but I'm sure that something will come up with the students.
Cool. All right. Thank you. Unless there's any other questions. All right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Stay healthy. Right.
And we do have 2 almost complete applications for 2 new student school board liaisons.
Awesome.
Yes. So hopefully they'll be all set by December.
That's excellent. Does it mean something when the owl leaf flashes its eyes at me?
It means it's love.
Oh, okay, perfect. It's just blinking, it's just batting its eyelashes.
Yes.
Perfect. I didn't know if that was like a connection thing or if I should.
So I have the owl control on my phone. I have an app to control it, and I put the volume up as much as I could.
Oh, maybe it was adjusting then.
Adjusting, yeah.
All right. Excellent. Okay, so our next agenda item is the budget presentation. So this is our first budget presentation of this budget cycle. So we have a couple of areas that we'll be going over tonight, and we're just going to run through them in the order that we have in our packet. So that is the first one being the school board.
Okay, so I'm gonna basically do it the way we usually do it, which is line by line, but then feel free to ask Meredith any questions. So wages, school board, also we put a little bit more backup on, what makes up each of these lines. That was also already in your packet. So the wages for school board is staying the same, and Social Security, Medicare, retirement, school board conferences and meetings. That's the NHSBA $250 all-inclusive workshop fee. And from what we understand, that is not changing. Legal, we did decide to increase because we have had increased legal costs. So we're just trying to look at actual spending and making that a little bit more accurate. We went from 15,000 to 20,000 this year. So an increase in $5,000. I also wanted to let you know that we always talk about wiggle room in the budget. So you could decide to not increase this because you do have a legal trust. So if something really goes out of whack and goes overboard, you have a legal fund trust that you can go into. So that might be one that you want to keep an eye on. In terms of the audit, it's a little bit less. We signed a multi-year contract with our auditor, so we have some savings there because of signing on for multiple years. Advertising is going to stay about the same. Unfortunately, we're advertising still all the time for positions because we're still working on getting as many of our support staff positions filled as we can. In terms of school board expenses, this is something that we talked a lot about because we have an SAU supply line and a school board expenses or school board supply line. And we've been trying to make that a little bit more accurate with spending. We haven't completely had a conversation with the board that I think we should have with you about when we do things like gifts and recognition. We should really define what comes from the SAU line and what comes from the school board line. So for now, this is an amount that we believe to be accurate, but at some point we would like to make that distinction. And then the annual meeting expenses seem to be pretty level. And then school board dues and fees are also level. So the total difference is an increase of $5,800, and the 5,000 of that is that increase in legal fees. So any questions on the school board line?
I'm good with it.
Yep.
Do you want me to add that legal on, we always keep a running list of
Yeah.
those things. Okay, so add that legal in there.
All right, so our next area is SAU.
Okay, so for wages, SAU, we just had a slight decrease with changes in personnel. Additional time is for board meetings and annual meeting. The insurance deductible is level, and I'm going to kind of skip down through all of the et cetera, mandatory retirement, Medicare, Social Security kind of things. And we'll go to SAU conferences. So for SAU conferences, we had last year agreed to add $2,000 professional development into administrator contracts. So that would be for the business administrator and for the superintendent. That's what makes up that 4,000. Skipping down again, unemployment compensation, workers' comp, other employee benefits. The other employee benefits is my retirement contribution. So that may be a number that changes based on your hire for next year. So just to take note of whether or not you want to include that in the budget or not. SAU contracted services, we added, and this is my recommendation, is that we added $10,000 here just because with the new superintendent, and I don't know, I'm assuming that you are sticking to a 0.6 FTE, but of course you might be changing that, I'm not sure. But if you're sticking to the 0.6 FTE, we thought it would be a good idea to really have a chunk of money for that new superintendent to be able to contract things out that might be kind of over that usual 3-day-a-week kind of things. So again, that's, something that you can decide whether you want to keep or not, but that would be our suggestion, at least until somebody gets on board and we can figure out the time and everything. Copier service is level, as is the copier lease. The admin accounting software is a slight increase of $300. Mostly that's because we use Pay Schools for the school lunch program, and we used to use it for ASP and split it. So now the whole amount is in the SAU line instead of seeing some of it in food service. So that's the only change there. Postage, we're estimating $500. We don't mail things as much as we used to. SAU travel is reimbursement for, conferences, hearings, et cetera, whenever somebody from the SAU needs to go someplace. Pre-employment expenses is our fingerprinting cost whenever anybody new comes on board. SAU supplies, again, this is the counterpart to the school board supplies line, so we're trying to make that accurate to what we're spending. SAU software is $6,000. Oh, the accounting software. Am I wrong, Meredith, that the 300 is actually in SAU software or the 300 is in SAU accounting
The
software?
300, the accounting software is for embedded visions.
Okay, so that just had an increase?
Yes.
Okay, so that's my mistake. So the SAU software is where the increase from not having the after-school program split with the food services. My bad on that one. No new furniture, and then SAU dues and fees is estimated at 2,500. Any questions on SAU? Overall, the difference, given what we've presented, is negative $8,601.58, so negative 2.37%.
I don't have any questions.
Do you want to do anything with, do you want to put that 10,000 on the wiggle room list or the retirement part?
I would leave both.
Leave both.
I mean,
Okay.
personally, we're gonna need some cushion in the SAU.
Okay. All right.
All right, so our next one is building administration.
Mrs. Reed.
So the part that I do pops down about halfway down to building admin conferences. And there's $2,400 in that, which is a decrease. That's for conferences for myself and the administrative assistant and secretary to do throughout the year. Then skipping a couple down, building admin contracted services, roughly the same. Copier services, no change. Copier lease, no change. There's a lot of no change. Building admin school postage went down by 28% roughly. Again, like Sydney said, we're not using postage as much. And we did have some left over on our on the machine. Principals travel is remaining the same. Admin supplies I did increase it about 19%. Again, last year I increased it a little bit. This year I found that I'm still buying a lot of the stuff out of pocket, so I figured I'd try to alleviate doing that. So I added a little bit more. Copy paper, same. New equipment, we don't need any new equipment. We got the laminator last year. Thank you for that. And then dues and fees would be for me for the National Association of Elementary School Principals and National Association of School Principals. And that's my part of that.
So overall, an increase of $1,309 and change and 0.49%.
I'm assuming the health insurance deductible is someplace else now.
Yeah, so since we're so small, sometimes it's just one person in a function. So what we do is we pull out benefits into, it's one line that's benefits and then dental.
Gotcha. Perfect.
But then I think
There's
the
been some
deductible
census.
might stay, the deductible stays in, doesn't it?
There's been census changes. so,
Okay, yeah. And
So we have no deductible.
Right.
Sure.
that might mean that nobody's taking a deductible.
Oh, is that the difference between the
Buyback
two
and
two
the,
different plans? with
yeah.
the-
Mhm.
Gotcha.
So also, I'm not sure how much we talked about this at our last meeting, but by some miracle of miracles, New Hampshire retirement is down, which is the first time I've ever actually seen it, be a decrease in contributions, but that's down. And then the GMR that we got is 9.1%. And what was dental again, Meredith?
1.5.
1.5%. So,
All right, so our next area is buildings and grounds.
Okay. I'm gonna start down where trash disposal. That is up $1,000 basically from what we spent this year. The Casellas went up that amount. Contracted services is up. I got that broken down into with your added info. Refinishing the gym floor at $1,750 this year. Paid $1,250, I'm just guessing with supplies and such going up. I was pleasantly surprised this year how much less we paid, so I think that's the ballpark we should be in. Water testing, same thing, little increase. Actually, it's a little less than last year. In my spreadsheet, if you have those in color and the ones in blue are numbers that I'm still waiting on, so they're estimates. On my end, I've got some information to have those estimates, so they're pretty good. They should be right in the ballpark, but on the flooring, we obviously need to do something with the bathroom floors on the game bathroom and the staff bathroom. And I want to get away from the linoleum. I'd like to go to something epoxy or some type of composite flooring. So I think that this amount I put in there should at least do the game bathrooms and the staff bathroom and probably another set of bathrooms. They're starting, even the ones that are in decent condition are starting to discolor and such, so. Pest services. Basically the same. The generator, they went up this year, and basic, nothing was out of the norm, that's just basic maintenance, so we adjusted for that. Fire protection systems, same thing, they went up in price, so we adjusted there. For security systems, not sure what you got from information. Did you give out the map of the camera coverages? No, okay. That's one thing. I made a map of the coverages that we finished doing the cameras this year. And the only gaps we have are in the rear walls.
don't want to be specific about.
Strike that from the right.
You're right. So that would be the estimated to put a couple more cameras in. The door locks and keys, I put that in there. That's basically finishing. We did the exterior keying this year. And if we want to go with that grand scheme of the keying, that would be doing the interior to make the system all work with that one factory key. We obviously are capable of getting by with what we have as far as hardware internally, but like I said, this would be to finish that project.
And this might be a good time to talk about how we did look at all the options. You know, we looked at rekeying mechanical keys on the inside as part of the master plan. And we also did start to look into, Ed, I think you brought up last summer over, do we forget about keys and do we just start looking into fobbing everything?
Yeah. So I did talk to the company that did our exteriors to be on the same system there. He was saying, obviously when you're doing keying, you got to redo all the hardware without coming through and looking at each door. He said they use a rule of thumb of 2,500 per door. And I figure it's about 40 doors, so yeah. about $100,000 to do an interior. And that's just the hallway doors. Septic and the grease tanks are about the same. So they should use this. Glass, same. Elevator, basically same. HVAC, I upped the amount there. The price, I actually changed companies this year, trying to get better price, better service, and the prices are just becoming astronomical. So yeah, so I buffered it, but I'm even concerned even with that buffer, how much the HVAC. We don't have a lot of issues. But there are some maintenance issues that should be addressed. I don't think have been addressed for years, as far as some of the air handlers, to fine tune them, get the movers exact and such. So that number we could kind of feather along. And then I also added in kitchen repairs this year, just small amount, because we didn't have anything there, and we should budget just a little bit. One of the big items on here is the exterior cafeteria overhang on the exit. I got calls into 6 companies trying to get some type of number. That roof, we found we didn't have, we had an issue with a camera, and it was underwater, and it's under that overhang. And so I got up there, and it's a semi-flat roof, and the drainage has been seeping underneath the drip edge, and it's rotted that whole structure, basically. So I'm putting a guesstimate in there that it's going to roughly cost that, and that's a rubber roof also, which concerns me. If that's the substrate to that could get pricey to the point that may have to be just redone. So the next was the buildings and grounds renovations. Not sure on the spreadsheets that you got. Did they get an updated one?
Yeah, yes.
Okay, so you do have the 19.2. Yeah, that was a number I just got last week, and she was saying when she was giving out, before she sent me the number, she said that the price is just astronomical this year with the sealant. So, and then labor also is an issue. So yeah, that number doubled, over doubled.
And do you want to talk about whether we've been debating whether or not that would be done maybe next year's budget,
Yeah.
or maybe we wait another year after the renovation parking lot project, that kind of thing?
Yeah, because it's one of those, this is one of the regular maintenance. I just wanted to stay up with the driveway because there's a lot of cracks, and they did seal coat them last year, and they aren't in bad shape. But I'm just trying to predict another year of plowing, you know, what condition we're going to be in. But if we were to do this next year, it would be a struggle because we have the construction going on next year. And then we're also possibly dealing with that rear parking lot, you know, what are we doing there? So, so this is one that I'm almost double thinking now, as far as, you know, how, if we want to think about that this next year or the following year. Ground maintenance. I moved up the loam and such just from this year's buying mulch and topsoil and such. And here again, prices went up a little bit, so I added another 500. Pest control and such is the same. Equipment rental, I upped that. We dropped it last year. without, I guess, I was more awakened to how much the cost and availabilities to stuff were and how much I needed to rent items, so. Then move shoveling would be the same. Building liability, that's something Meredith would give me a number for. Custodial travel stay the same, supplies stay the same. Propane, gas. We're actually stayed the same for budget. And we did sign a contract on that, so we're locked in. Electricity, basically the same. Gasoline, diesel, I brought it up a little bit this year. Basically price of gas, plus we haven't been adding in our rentals, the diesel that we've been purchasing. For new equipment, we have basically nothing for woodworking in the shop at all, other than a skill saw, so I was hoping to get a couple pieces, table saw and a drill press both for metal and for wood. Something portable that could be used around it for some of the projects I'd like to get done. Next is school furniture. We didn't have anything in the budget last year. At times there was asked for bookshelves, this and that. We pretty much used up all our inventory up in the garage and storage, and there's nothing earmarked for this. It's just kind of, if something did come up, which has to be approved, but I just want to put a little something in there. And then in replacement equipment, that would be the only other thing. I'd like to purchase another canister vacuum. That seems to be the vacuum of choice for the custodians, and that's pretty used up, but having a second one definitely. Do you want to do the big items that I put in?
Yeah, so you mean just going over the ones that we need for discussion?
Yeah,
Yeah, and there's one you didn't talk about yet.
yeah,
So I'll talk about it.
sure.
So some of the big ones that we feel are up for discussion about whether you want to do them now or later, or maybe in a different way, or fund them a different way, are the doors, locks, and keys. The interior keying, that's number one. The rear cameras would be number two. You could, we could fund those differently, or you could wait, or, those could be up for discussion. The exterior overhang, I know Toby is doing the best that he can to estimate. It sounds like that needs to be done, so that one might be a more of a need to, or we'll have more trouble later on. The seal and the stripe sounds like something that we might be able to wait another year, and it might be better to wait another year. And you don't see too much grass growing up in the,
No, like
Up
I
in the
said, it's
cracks
actually,
now, right?
that's the thing, it's actually in very good shape out there. It's just, I
Mhm.
just don't want to get there, but I think we could buy another year, so.
okay. And then the one that I'll bring up, which I've been teasing Toby about for a year, just to let you know, is that he has a lot of difficulty getting all of the grounds work done and the plowing and et cetera, without something like a Kubota. So we've been talking a lot about the school having a Kubota, which could be either, my recommendation would be that if you want to go forward with that piece of equipment, that we do a lease. So we got information on leasing. The total cost of the Kubota, with everything, all the specs that we would need to do everything that GVS needs, would be $43,468. And we have options that Meredith did research on for a 4-year or a 5-year lease. And it looks like annual payments of, depending on the 4 or 5 year, $9,000 to $11,000. So about, $10,000 per year when you're factoring in interest. The rate that we were quoted from municipal leasing consultants is 5.99%.
You turn that in at the end of the lease?
There's an option to buy for $1 at the end of the lease.
So you're.
Can we buy for $1 now?
Yeah, after you give them the
Ask.
40,000, we can. Yeah, that makes, so I mean, you're essentially financing the purchase.
So we know that that's a, you know, a big ticket item. But we're also at the stage where I've had Toby do a lot of research about how much he's renting equipment and what really needs to be done. And as you know, with our staffing, you know, a better piece of equipment can help time wise when we don't have the people.
Yeah.
So hopefully we will have the people too, but like, I think moving forward with this idea of a lease so that it's not a big hit all at once will give our, you know, facility staff the ability to do what they need to do around here.
What is the average life of one of these tractors? Like, could this go on for a very long time?
Yeah, tractors typically, I mean, if they're maintained, they should last.
Yeah.
And here again, I take care of them, but, yeah. If you go out there and look at use their stuff 30, 40 years
Yeah.
old, it's,
So you lease it for 4 or 5 years and then it's ours.
yeah.
And that's good. And do we have a place to store this?
Yeah, I've fit them into the garage pretty well. I made sure we've had space. No,
It'll fit.
Yeah, actually, last winter, I rented one, we had it for a month, and we kept it in the garage, and I just had one for a month, getting ready for the playground. Yeah, they'll fit.
Can you talk a little bit about some of the things that would do around GDS? Because that might help everybody.
Yeah, the big thing is the snow removal and this rear chute. You can't plow over this bank, and I know you've been doing it for years, but you end up plowing down to either end and then have to push with the truck. My concern right now is that truck transmission that beats on that truck, and so that's when we end up renting. You get to the point you can't do it anymore, then you have to rent. And what happened this summer, trying to get the tractor for the playground, I think it took me a month to get a tractor, and that concerns me in the winter. If that starts backing up on either end, you're not gonna get buses in here. So there's just, that's a big thing. And one of the attachments that's in this tractor is a rear snow blower. And we put all the snow over the guardrail. So then you wouldn't have all that backing up. So that's kind of, that would be a good 50% of that tractor would be the pushing back and that stuff. Drainage, I just got done digging out drainage ditches, moving the furniture, moving stages, grading the driveway, just graded up there for the buses. I'm thinking long-term, I don't know. Is something me and Kristen talked about, I think last year. I don't know with these paths, how this driving, we could get, but to work on those, so. There's just a lot of outdoor maintenance. And it's almost like a second person too. It's a lot of stuff we're doing now, it takes 2 people to do stuff. The tractor just adds, saves all that.
With the supply chain, are they available to even lease for this year?
I didn't hear any supply issues. Yeah.
I didn't hear any either. I think they're available. It's very hard to rent them,
Yeah.
but I didn't hear any issues with if we, did a purchase or lease.
Yeah, the concern with renting this year, last year we used, when I came in, they were using Upper Valley Rentals. Last year when the snow was flying and we were backing up, they had no tractor at all. They had sold it and hadn't replaced it. So I used a place out of Boscawen, blanked on the name, but anyway, that's a tractor we used for a month, and I went to use them again this summer for the out here, and they're out. They got rid of all their rentals, so it's like, all right, now I'm running out of place to rent from. So yeah, that's another concern.
Yeah. The rental is just pouring, I mean, it's needed, but it's not money, like we just pour it away.
Yeah, it's like, yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
And you're always gonna have it. It's not like this would be bought just for like digging the fence up for the playground. It's like every winter you have the snow issue. And,
Yeah.
Then, like I said, the drainage and as far as the drainage ditches leaving the property and around the buses and such, that was all filled in, so this is upkeep.
The annual cost is like 10 or 11, you just said. Cindy, right?
Yes,
Yeah,
yeah, so
that's-
principal and interest would, if we did a 4-year lease, it would be 4 annual payments of $11,832. If we did a 5-year lease, it would be 5 annual payments of $9,733. But of course, you know, with the 5-year, we're gonna be paying them more interest, right?
seems very
Does it make sense to throw it on the list of either a straight out purchase or a lease after we get?
Yeah, because we
More finalized,
could see
because-
where it is, where the whole budget falls.
I'd hate to just give away 6%.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If we don't need to,
Yeah.
especially on.
Yeah.
You know, 42,000 or so, or, you know, if you could purchase it outright for sometime around 40. The numbers make sense. Couple quick questions, not so much the projects, that those all make sense, just. Have the wages been updated based on the new agreements?
Yes.
Yes.
So even with the yearly increases, we're dropping in our custodial staff wages?
Well, they all got the 5% increase
Yep.
for the CBA, but we had some census changes, so there was a higher budget in the prior year. So even with the increases.
Even with the 5%.
So,
they're
so
going down.
essentially, we're down personnel, is what you're saying.
No, it's
Well-
new personnel,
Right.
Yeah.
So they came in at a lower rate.
Yeah.
Yes.
Okay.
staffing
And
changes.
we really don't think we're gonna see any electricity increase? I mean, I know my household rates doubled.
Yeah, it's, Barrett, what did, you had the quote from the electrical company?
That was for the supply.
Yeah.
So we locked in on a rate for that, but
Well, the supply is where the increase was. It wasn't on the transmission.
yeah,
But I know Eversource went from 11 cents a watt to 22 and change a watt.
But we got
We
lots of-
signed a 2-year,
You said a 2-year?
yeah,
That makes
we
sense.
signed
Okay.
a 2-year with 3 or 4 months renewable in each year. So we're locked into the rate that we have through next year's budget cycle.
Amazing.
Perfect.
Yeah, it's great. So we lucked out with that right before everything decided to.
I did want to ask a tactical question about the truck, because I'm hearing from Toby that the sooner the better. I mean, is that something
This year,
we can talk, like, get before the snow flies, or that seems too soon?
our budget is still like really tight this year.
Yeah.
Like we've had some unanticipated costs and we can revisit a few things to see if there might at some point be some comfort level with that. But right now I don't have
What,
that comfort level.
is it just a transmission that,
I mean, it's
I mean,
fine.
I get it's a beater truck, but
Yeah, I mean, it's running, it's just one of those, I'm real fussy with the equipment, and like I said, when I'm pushing those banks as high as this, you feel it, and it's, so I'll let off, but
Yeah.
it's like, I mean, that truck gets worked, is very, 12,000 miles on it, but most of it's backwards, going back and forth.
So is that 24,000?
But, I mean, it's one of those. I'm the one that does most of the plow now, just to baby it, and I have no concerns when they getting through this winter. It's just,
It's gonna.
it's something that's on my mind, probably for next year, start saying, hey,
Yeah.
you know, we're probably gonna start sinking some money into this thing. So
what year is it?
that is in a
Ballpark.
2009,
9, 11, yeah,
it's a 9.
9, yeah, that's, sorry.
Would having the tractor take some work off of the truck?
Definitely, like, definitely, it'd take a lot of that work off.
Well, have a snow blower on the back.
Yeah, that's
So
the other
just the
thing.
snow,
is
just the
run-
snow removal
Yeah,
piece,
just
but-
running that rear chute is a lot of work off that truck.
Next year.
Well, what we can do is, you know, when I'm not as nervous about where our bottom line is, maybe at the end of the year, you might want to bring this up as a, I mean, I think something should go in the budget for this, but you might want to bring it up as a, like, unencumbered funds at the end of the year if you want to see about moving forward with it.
Would you be in recommendation of throwing money into just plan on fixes, new transmission, that kind of stuff, or
Yeah, I mean,
completely new
like-
vehicle?
yeah, I'm not ready to say that, throw away the truck. The truck's fine. It's just, yeah.
Maybe
needs
add
a
some money
rebuild.
for some
Yeah.
rebuilds.
Yeah, something like
Makes
that.
sense.
Yeah,
Okay.
because the motor's fine.
Yeah, so we got 12,000.
Yeah, no, it's like,
12,000 hard miles.
yeah.
The
yeah.
It's definitely hard.
Backwards.
The lottery is at 1.2 billion.
That's
If I
what-
buy a ticket and win, I buy this.
Or a Kubota.
Well,
Think
I
you'd rather
told-
have a tractor.
Yeah,
And a
yeah,
tractor.
yeah.
And a tractor.
I told Toby I'd get him a little Kubota ornament.
Oh, to hang off the
Jesus.
That's good.
Then you gotta get a little Toby to put in it.
So other things, just basically the doors, locks and keys. I don't know if you want me to leave these on the list or if
Yeah.
you want me to make any yes or no, they're staying in or not at this point.
I think we have to look at that and just say, we've gotta keep that on. It's gotta-
Well, I think, yeah, I mean, honestly, I think all this stuff
Yeah.
for right now should just stay.
Except maybe the
Throw
ceiling.
down, maintenance projects for us to look at when we get a
Yeah.
little more fine tuned.
Even the seal and stripe, do you want to leave that on
Like,
there?
get-
I would leave it for now. I mean,
For now.
I don't think there's any reason to make a decision
Okay.
now on any of this stuff until we find out where this ends
Yeah.
in totality.
Okay,
Agree.
all right,
Excellent.
thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
My dad has a Kubota and he has never run out of holes today. Like literally, it's years. He is still digging
Does it have a
holes.
backhoe on it? Is it a?
I did add that.
Yeah,
up,
that's, yeah.
My husband would probably
Starting.
apply as a custodian.
We should put that in our ads.
New tractor.
Yeah.
That actually could be a selling point.
New tractor.
Don't
Here's
tell
all
him-
of the like
don't tell him.
benefits and at the very
Recruitment
bottom
tool, recruitment tool.
in bold, new tractor. All right, excellent. So our next area is transportation.
Okay, in this one, I am gonna ask for a vote here tonight, but actually you don't really have to do it tonight, but I think you might want to just get it out of the way. We're at the end of our 3-year bus contract. And I don't see any sense at all right now in putting another RFP out for transportation because it's not gonna prove any different results. So my recommendation, we have a clause in our bus contract of extending for 2 years on an annual basis. So my recommendation would be that the board goes ahead to vote that we just extend our contract with First Student for next year.
Are the rates included in that?
The rates are included in that. Yeah,
And how many buses is that?
good question.
Ideally, or?
Yeah.
Well,
So we are technically contracted for 4 buses
Yeah.
and the van driver. We still do not have our 4th bus in operation because
Because they
they
don't
cannot
drive
find drivers at all. And we're also we've already had 2 driver switches just in the last month with our current fleet. So just to let you know, we don't pay any month that we don't have that bus operating. But at this point, it's incredibly hard to tell if we had the 4th bus, if more people would be riding, if our times would be different. The buses are running like right on the edge right now in terms of timing from middle and high school down here. And as soon as the snow comes, without that 4th bus, it's going to be even later. So we still do really hope to get the 4th bus, but they're doing everything that they can.
Capacity wise, we're doing better this year
Yeah.
than we were last year, obviously, because we've got South Cove has got some activities. CKA opened up here
Mhm.
and there too, so
Yeah.
capacity wise, we're running okay. For now.
for now.
But everything changes every season.
Yes.
And we also
Right,
don't know if some
sports.
people, we've heard from a few parents who have their kids not riding the bus right now because the 4th bus isn't operating and either times are off or they don't want to put their child on a bus with 65 packed in
Wow.
kids, which is what one of those buses is sometimes. And Mrs. Reed will tell you because she's written it.
It's not my favorite.
I was gonna say, fun time.
So if we extended the lease, it would be for the 4
It would be for the
Buses.
four.
buses.
Yeah, 4 buses and the
Yeah.
van driver.
And how much of an increase over the 345 are we looking at there?
That is,
We're still waiting to hear back.
we're waiting still.
I thought it was contracted.
It is, isn't it contracted in there, the increase for the 4th year?
No, it doesn't have the actual
Oh, I thought
increase
it
for
was.
the add-on,
Okay.
so, people were out, so we're waiting
Okay.
to hear back.
But
He's
that-
gonna be back in the office.
Sorry,
today.
that's my, because I thought that that was written in, if we extended that, it would be a certain percentage. No,
And-
okay,
Yeah,
all right, my bad.
So I'm assuming at that point, we don't want to vote on extending. it without
Yeah,
knowing the
sorry, I
dollars.
thought it was in there, so yeah, we'll hold off.
I'm sorry, I'm forgetful. How long the lease is this?
This would be just for extending 1 more year,
Okay.
just through next budget year.
We have 2 options. Extend a year at a time for the next 2
Yeah,
years.
right.
Got it,
Yeah.
okay. So
Can
You
we,
know, I should have been able to tell that.
we're just gonna revisit, then we'll just revisit the
You're just-
transportation
that was redacted.
when we get numbers in.
Yeah, so should we revisit transportation next
Yeah,
month? You wanna do
Definitely.
that?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so we will plan to revisit transportation next month on we'll add that to our list. So let's move to the bond.
So these are pretty straightforward. This year is just the interest payment, but next year we start paying off both bonds. So this is where we are with those, which is an increase of $56,857, 11.87%, which is strictly the new addition of the grounds renovation and playground bond minus some savings we have in paying the other bond off.
Any questions on that one?
And Meredith puts a nice backup there
Yeah.
about our principal and interest.
Okay, so our next area is food service.
So food service is relatively the same, just some changes in contractual increases. So a total increase of $3,017.72 for 2.66%.
Seems pretty straightforward.
Any questions there?
And salad bars back.
Nice.
That's
exciting.
That is-
I have not heard about that.
Must be
Smoothies and
popular.
salad bar. Mhm. Well, I think, isn't tomorrow the first salad bar day?
Yeah,
Yes,
so
ma'am.
it's starting November 1st, it was once a week.
Mhm.
Nice.
Okay.
I bet they'll ask for more.
I do have to say, I don't know what they put in the chicken nuggets here, but that's like a national holiday. At my household, when they have chicken nuggets.
You should ever pack some up and bring them home to you.
What is the magic?
What is the magic of the chicken nuggets? But apparently they only do it once a month and it's a big deal.
So cute.
All right, any other questions or thoughts from the board on the budget, our first budget area of this budget season?
I'm just so impressed with the presentation. I'm grateful. It's not always like this. So thank you to everybody who inputs this and organizes the data, and it's comprehensible.
It is a team effort, and I have to say that Meredith is just doing such an outstanding job in this
We are so
role. It's
fortunate.
just great.
Jumped right in both feet.
Mhm.
Yeah, and one day she was like, I really love doing budget.
Oh, boy.
It's continued proof that there's a person for every job.
Thank goodness.
All right, so our next agenda item is the superintendent search, and we have a few things to talk about sort of under that. So I'm just gonna run through a couple of different areas for us to kind of take our next step forward for the superintendent search. The first one is that we have been formally and informally approached by other districts who are also undergoing superintendent searches, who are not full-time districts who don't have full-time superintendents, wanting to ask about our interest in having shared superintendent services. So I know it's something that the board had talked about previously and we weren't feeling as particularly interested. But I told one board chair in particular that I would bring it forward to our meeting this month to talk about. So that sort of more formal request that came to me from the board chair was from Lyme. So Lyme is going through a superintendent search. They also have a part-time superintendent. Wondering if we would be interested in having shared superintendent services with them. It also has been part of sort of a wrapped in discussion about sharing some of those services with Plainfield, Cornish. We haven't had the same level of sort of like formal request from those boards that we got from Lyme, but I know it's been part of conversations that we've had about like, what are some of those positions and areas that we could share. So I wanted to, before we go into any more of the details of moving our own search forward, it's important for us to answer that question of, are we doing our own search or are we interested in sharing superintendent services with another district?
Sydney, I'm curious what you think, because I've been thinking about a lot and I feel like my pendulum has swung towards sharing services. I'd be more inclined for like Plainfield and Cornish since they're like here. Say publicly about Lyme, but I think that's a little more complicated for a bunch of reasons. So I'm just curious, I don't know if you feel comfortable, Sydney, like weighing in at all, or I'm leaning more towards the sharing because I think we would probably get slightly different candidates coming through for like a full-time superintendent role versus like the 2/3 time. We've talked about this before, but I feel like I'm swinging more towards sharing in that light.
Just on a very general level, I'll give you the big picture pros and cons.
Yeah.
So I think sharing is always a good idea, and small districts really benefit a lot from sharing, so that's a good thing. You would need, if you shared superintendent services with any other district, you would need to hire additional positions. So you would need to consider the fact that you'd need to probably hire somebody to help with business services, because you would need to hire somebody to work on AP and payroll, because that job becomes too big when you're working with multiple districts, and possibly things like the other thing is maybe if you're sharing director of student services, you might need more building coordinator kind of positions, because the director wouldn't be able to oversee that bigger picture. So in a way, it might not be financially a wash, or it could be, but the idea would be that you get more benefits for students. That you might be able to hire more full-time people or other positions to oversee everything. The general cons about sharing are that communities generally like to have their local control and their local access, in terms of wanting to be able to stop into the SAU office, or wanting to be able to have their own, and that is it's a New Hampshire thing. It could be a cultural thing. So you would have to think about where Grantham community would fall in terms of wanting that local access and control versus sort of relinquishing some of that. And then the other thing that I would think about in terms of sharing in that regard would be the proximity, so where is somebody housed? And I can tell you from experience, I'm in 3 different districts, right? So the space becomes an issue in terms of where are you, and are you working in a different place every day, and who has access to you on which days, kind of things becomes an issue. So I think there are definite pros and definite cons.
Yeah, you probably lose some efficiency in the 3 places at a time,
In terms of this though, maybe I'm missing something, but we're talking about just shared superintendent services, right?
Yeah.
We're not talking about business administrations, special ed.
What Sydney's pointing out is if we shared, we would have to hire other people because.
Would we have to if we're just doing shared superintendent?
I think we
Well,
would.
like Plainfield and Cornish is a 1.0 FTE. So, if you were hiring one person to do technically a 1.6 FTE, you would need to have some supplemental services to make that
Okay, so in that specific circumstance, but if it's a district, is Lima 0.6?
Yeah, I think
They
they
are.
are. You know if they're a 0.4 or 0.6? 0.6.
So it's over, yeah.
Well over.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, I think one of the big things you have to constantly weigh with that, anytime you start sharing, is who is each district getting what they're paying for? Or is more time because of a district struggling being allocated to one district compared to the other? I think if we thought about something like this, I would actually be more inclined to hire at a full time and then contract hours out to either line or whoever's interested, where instead of us sort of, we'll hire at a 0.5 and you hire at a 0.5, it would be, we essentially would hire a full-time person and say, listen, we've got 20 hours a week that we can contract out. Are you interested? And go down that road.
How does that help the like accountability piece or like the balance of who needs what? Like we're ultimately the hiring entity,
Well,
so we're sort of like ownership.
Well, no, you'd have a contract around, it would be, you'd have 20 hours a week, and that's what you have, for services out. I think you get into, it gets a little grayer when you're still quote unquote technically sharing, and, Grantham,
I see.
let's just say Grantham's
I see
running
what
like
you're saying.
clockwork.
Right.
The other school district is having problems, all of a sudden, the superintendent that we're sharing
Yeah.
is spending 80% of their time there and 20% of their time with here, or vice versa.
And that's similar to what Plainfield and Cornish have done traditionally. It's Plainfield holds the contract
Mhm.
and Cornish.
Cornish has like administrative services agreement.
Yep.
So they buy the time, basically. And I think just thinking about those needs in every district will bubble up, and then,
they're all
it'll
gonna
always
ebb
happen.
and
Yeah.
flow. You can't, but that's my main concern, is all of a sudden we're gonna be doing a lot more policing or a lot more monitoring of, we getting what
The
we,
hours.
what we should be for what we're paying. That would be my biggest concern. And I don't know which way yes, I think it would open up the candidate pool to have a full-time position. But I'm still not 100% convinced that we wouldn't get a halfway decent pool, 60%.
I have been thinking, I feel like one of the things that, has come to us, especially from Plainfield, and a little bit of support for it from Lab, was the idea of sharing in some other areas. And I know Sydney had brought forward, some enthusiasm about the idea of like potentially sharing in some kind of like curriculum position, or I think I'm interested in exploring some of those other opportunities for us to share some stuff that I think this would override any of those areas. Like we wouldn't be able to,
I see.
we wouldn't be able to share, have split superintendent services and all at the same time of like, superintendent and the shared curriculum person, and start to look at other areas. I think we have an opportunity that we've started to explore some areas for sharing with some other districts that I would like to kind of see where that plays out. And I think,
I also think it's important to, we don't know what we're going to get for candidate pool at 0.6, and I don't think we want to completely abandon that without knowing what's there.
Although I've heard repeatedly that we got really lucky. I've heard that for a bunch of times.
Yep.
I know that.
Doesn't mean you can't be lucky again either. I mean, I'm just,
Yeah.
I'm
If you want
saying,
other
not,
perspectives, I can direct you to who you're talking to. Just to be fair.
I think, I'm really of two minds, so maybe I should let other people speak. But I am a little worried about the candidate pool. I feel like people are fleeing public education, and and a lot of people are hiring too, that's the other thing, like, and I mean, Grantham is a very desirable district to be a superintendent, if you're listening out there, but yeah, it's a lot of trade-offs.
I'm just gonna throw out another pro and con, like, you could see that you could have a pro by maybe getting a bigger candidate pool because you're advertising for a 1.0. But except for Lyme, everybody else is advertising for a 1.0. Maybe you would increase your candidate pool by advertising for a 0.6.
Right.
And I don't know,
Differentiating.
that's a crystal ball kind of
Well, yeah,
thing.
and
you
no
know?
one knows. I would just hate to cut off that avenue before we even saw what was down that road.
Yeah, and that's sort of what
Yeah,
Brittany's saying.
yeah, a different. yeah.
Especially, I mean, and I would think Lyme would also, I mean, if I'm sitting in Lyme's position, I'd like to see, unless, you know, the goal is to, you know, they've got some kind of cost savings in mind by doing this. I think I'd like to, even for them, I think they would want to see what's out there before.
On their own.
On their
without
own.
joining
Yeah,
us.
it doesn't mean that, you know, if we start the search and all of a sudden we are finding absolutely nothing, then we couldn't reverse course and then talk about, okay, what do we do to, you know, what do we have to do to see what we can combine? You know, thankfully, you know, Sydney's given us
Mhm.
a much longer runway than I think some
Mhm.
boards actually end up getting. So,
Mhm.
you know, it may make sense to use that as to our advantage and just sort of see what's out there and then reevaluate.
Okay, so I feel like I can't even speak intelligently about this because my head is just so flustered with, you know, how does this work? So the concerns that I think about, you know, the relationship that you've built together and to, you know, it's just a very supportive and interdependent relationship. And I'm thinking, how do you do that with another administrator as well? You know, does one school lose and the other gets more of, you know, that relationship? I think about each school's different educational philosophies and approaches. Can one person serve, you know, two different types of approaches to education and not feel like they're coming apart at the seams?
Very kind. Brittany.
No, I'm actually enjoying it.
Yeah, I think about, I don't even want to say this, but what if there was another pandemic? And I think about how much we depended on your availability to lead us through this. I mean, I can't believe I even said that, but I think it. And that's a, you know, a real possibility. I guess I'm having a problem with thinking I want to share. And I'll say that. I have a problem sharing those services, and I think some of the community would also. I really like what Sydney has done to create in this district, and I know the next person won't be Sydney, but the accessibility and the attention to GBS, I think, is what makes this district so unique. And yes, I know there's a shortage of applicants, but, you know, in my heart, that's how I feel.
And I mean, you've got a lot of our admin and SAU team here. I don't know if you want anybody else to kind of
That would be
chime in
nice.
on what the daily operation might be like.
I think what I'm thinking is in my current position, I don't know what things would be like with a part-time superintendent, because Sydney's part-time, but she's not part-time. So I don't have that crystal ball to know what it's gonna look like either way. Kind of to speak to relationships, I did have the fortune, I had Sydney first before the other two districts, but having the team approach has really, Sydney's brought those other two principals and I together so that we've been able to collaborate and work together, which has been a blessing because before that, I reached out to some people. But it's a pretty isolated position in Grantham. So I see pros and cons, but it's really hard for me to see what the picture would look like because as much as we have a part-time superintendent, we don't have a part-time
Right.
superintendent.
Yeah. And I'll just underscore what I said before, that to me, it really does matter which district we're talking about. Like Plainfield to me feels like a town that is similar to Grantham. And I could see like an integration with that community that would feel more comfortable. And I'll just leave it there like that. To me, it makes a lot more sense than I think that
And our
makes a big
kids
difference.
feed into the same high
Yeah.
school, so.
Yes.
There's a
Yes.
natural
Yeah, absolutely.
relationship to build there.
Yeah.
But with Plainfield, you're not just talking about, Plainfield, you're also talking about Cornish as well.
Yeah, Cornish is small.
Yeah.
Yeah, but still, it's a,
No, it's a. And there are pieces of, correct me if I'm wrong on this, but there, in a typical setup, there are pieces of what a superintendent would do that you are not doing for Plainfield and Cornish.
Absolutely.
So I think we don't, there
Yeah.
isn't a direct, like, it's not that we would be
Yeah.
replacing the Sydney that we have now with someone that would be doing the exact same thing, because
Right.
Plainfield and Cornish outsourced some of the
Yeah.
superintendent responsibilities to other folks within their teams, correct?
Yeah.
So it would be,
We took the superintendent responsibilities and divided them between me and the business administrator, who's also superintendent certified, but then also had to hire another person to help with business services, just to basically keep things going.
I'm probably jumping ahead, but I need to ask you, Sydney, when I look at, the Grantham School job description, and then I looked at, it was Plainfield in front of me. Did you feel like both could be workable together as one individual?
I think they both need to be revised and
Yes.
updated, because
Yeah.
the position is different
Yeah.
than when this was written in 2012.
Yeah, that was my first thing I circled. I circled 2012.
Yeah,
Well, I mean, we can take the approach of like, moving forward as is and see what the candidate pool is like, and as right, like, if that's not working for us, we can.
Yeah.
Return to it.
yeah, I think in most likelihood, if it's not working for us, it's probably not gonna be working for Lime or
yeah.
anyone else that,
Everybody's gonna
is
be
in the
looking
same
to-
boat, so all of a sudden, it's not, I think the chances of us missing out on an opportunity are pretty slim.
Yeah.
With that approach.
All right, so it sounds like moving forward with the position as it stands for the superintendent search, as we were anticipating. Okay, perfect. All right, so the next piece of that is looking at who and how we want to run the search, and then also the job description. So quickly on the job description first, I wanted to put what we currently have in front of everybody, and see if the board would like to update this. I'm assuming yes. So we have the new sort of job description template that we've been using as these job descriptions have been being updated for the district. And so I brought the technology director one. So this is when we updated the technology director position. So we could take the language that's in this job description and just sort of like plug it into the new template. Or we could really take apart the job description that we have here, or build a new job description in kind of this new template that we have. And what I would like to suggest is that two board members kind of take this on in the next month and bring a job description forward in December for the board to review, rather than us tonight trying to go through these pages.
Group editing is fun.
Yeah, nope, I'll get a Google Doc and just move on. So my guess is, and please feel free to tell me if I'm wrong and correct on this, that we'd like to update the job description from 2012, not just sort of move it into the new template.
Yes. Give it some
Okay,
attention.
all right, so do we have two people? I'm willing to be one of them if we have one other person that's willing to go through the job description that we had, start to fit it into the new template, and also get some input from Sydney about what we need to rethink, update. Do you have anybody that is interested and available in doing that over the course of the next month or so? I know it's busy, and I know.
I can, if anyone else wants to do it, they're welcome to, but I'm happy to.
I would feel good about that.
All right,
And I
perfect.
just,
We
I always
will,
think about availability. I just don't feel like I can consistently say,
It's okay. Yeah,
but thank you.
I'm happy to.
perfect. All right. We will touch base then. Perfect. All right. So we'll move forward on getting that updated. And if anybody does want to, I mean, you have it in previous board packets, but if anybody wants to kind of look at how we've been looking at the job descriptions, kind of the formatting of them, feel free to take a look at that. This was the technology director one.
So would you get to a point where you might give us, as board members, just an update of where you are? with
Yeah,
that,
definitely.
or
Yep.
what you're focusing in on?
Yep. Okay, then the last piece of it is the actual search itself. So we know there's, we've talked about kind of the options for that, and I reached out to School Board Association and got the like a proposal from them on their search. I'm just looking for it, what they offer for search services. And so I have the full proposal from them. But the important piece of it that I think everybody's kind of wondering about is the cost of it is $15,000. So if School Board Association runs the search, it's $15,000. They have expenses that are typically around $1,500 in addition, which includes there's options for where the ads are posted. If they come to things in person, mileage for anything that they might come to for in-person things, and then photocopies, that kind of stuff. And I asked them for specific information about how they involve community, because I knew that was something that was important. And they build in options to have a parent or two on the search committee. And then they also, in their timeline, have focus groups, surveys, all of that kind of stuff, and opportunities for during the interviewing process. So that's kind of built out into the thing. So for the superintendent search, they work with the Bryan Group. That's who they contract with to facilitate and accomplish searches. And there's information about the Bryan Group, which is Dr. William Bryan runs that. And so there's a whole bunch of information about kind of the philosophy that they take around that process. But I wanted to just kind of bring that forward just at a superficial level of, I know that price tag is probably something that's first on people's minds of looking at having the School Board Association run the search for us. I will say they are very busy with searches. They have more searches than I think they've ever had that they're running. They are doing Lebs, correct?
Yes, they are.
So they are handling Lebs search. So I think if we do want to work with them and with their timeline, we should, let them know that sooner rather than later so they can get started on their timeline. I think for me, the biggest sort of like hiccup for me is the price tag. But when I mentioned it in my house, the person who lives in my house who knows about more things like this was like, well, let me guess, what's it gonna be, like 75,000? I was like, oh God, okay, my reaction was not normal. But I think for me, looking at the biggest benefit I see of having the School Board Association handle the search for us is, one, I think as a board, we are very involved and extended people to begin with. And so trying to do something where we would have more of a hands-on is going to be another thing that I don't know if we have the bandwidth for.
Yeah.
Two, I think it's really important for this search in particular for us to have those levels of community engagement and to let the community know that we are really committed to this being a very open and transparent search process that they are involved in, and that there isn't a feeling of like, handpicked candidates being shepherded through a process to the finish line. That we don't have that we are coming at this blank slate. We want input, we want an impartial process.
I'm thinking that I'm sorry to interrupt.
No, go for it.
That using the School Board Association would probably save us time and be more efficient as well, rather than trying to find these things on our own and do this adequately, because we do have that timeline, and the sooner we have suitable candidates, the sooner we can.
And if you stop to think about the hours that are probably involved in this, the hourly cost of 15,000 is actually probably quite reasonable. Because when I think of like,
Yeah, I mean, I heard 15,000. I thought that was low.
That felt low, yeah.
I mean-
It was like, whoa.
You know, most
Yeah.
recruiters are 20% of salary.
Yeah.
And they don't run the search for you, they just bring a candidate to you,
Right.
and you do everything else, so. Yeah, I thought, honestly, I think 15,000 is pretty reasonable.
Me too.
Question I have about that.
Mhm.
So I've been through 3 searches, and in that process, we did those in-house.
Mhm.
When we looked at the school board stuff 2 superintendents ago, we looked at piecemealing, like they do have like a structured thing of, they'll do the advertising for this amount of money. There's pieces of that 15,000 that they will, is that still the same?
They don't, yeah, they have, it's like a comprehensive, this is the kind of the plan that you get. And there are things that you can do in addition to that are kind of the more like à la carte things. But this is, no, it's a full package now.
Might it be helpful, or can it be shared with Brenda to kind of look that over for the services offered? Or-
Well,
Yeah,
the issue, and this has come up in several local districts, which is why, the only reason why I would chime in
Yeah.
is that, like the School Board Association has no shortage of services and searches right now. So they're not really gonna be interested in negotiating.
Yeah.
The package.
Oh, yeah, I
Yeah.
think it's taking
That
a
is
look
a
at it.
lot.
I mean, I will say that, part of my hope is, if we went down that road, that they will provide some additional insight into some candidates as well, since they are conducting these searches.
So one of the things that happened in the past is, you have a certain group of superintendents ratio, location-wise, that will want to come to New Hampshire. So you're looking at more like New Hampshire, Vermont, Maine, maybe Massachusetts. And I'm wondering if they're doing more of an outreach, like national type situation too, which we probably would not attract, honestly,
so they have
as a part-time 0.6 position.
I think, and I've talked about this with a couple of people, but I think one of the things now, because so many of the job posting areas are internet-based platforms, like the local versus national search is almost a non-existent thing anymore, because they're all going onto the same platforms for, recruiting. They do offer kind of this like expanded search. So if your initial search is not proving to be successful, that's one of the like add-on additional costs, is that they'll do an expanded kind of what they refer to as like a deep research of passive candidates beyond normal sourcing channels. And it's not something that they have ever had to do even for rural district searches. So, but they do offer that. And they also have like, there's a breakdown, and I'll share this with the board. There's a breakdown of which pieces of it the Bryant Group and which pieces of it the School Board Association take on. So they do things like, they do an orientation and training for the search committee members. So the search committee members are all, coming at it with the same training of what they can ask, what they can't ask, interviewing questions, that kind of stuff. Looking at, they'll help sort of like set the stage from the hiring process for what the evaluation process is going to look like. So the School Board Association will, in this process, help us develop what the evaluation criteria for the candidates will be, once someone is hired. And then they do also have some provisions written in for if the candidate that you choose leaves the position within a year, they will run another search for you with expenses owned. The only thing that you pay is the expenses. So, and if there's there's a couple pieces of it that, there's an extension out for a year to 3 years of, involvement with their services. So thoughts on that?
Yeah,
I would agree.
I think so too.
Okay. All right, I will share this with you guys tonight with this full, and there is a proposed timeline for it. And so the first piece of it that they're gonna look at implementing will be the search committee, what we want a search committee to look like, and getting the search committee together. And then it's into December of collecting like stakeholder input and that kind of stuff. So I think, in terms of their timeline, we're still okay. If we move forward with having them do this search, we might just have like some quick turnaround in terms of, putting search committee together. And they are comfortable with us having like input into who do we want, what's the makeup of who we want to have in our search committee. So I will reach out to them and move that forward, and I'll share
Yep. thanks.
information I get from them.
Great.
Cool. Any other questions about that?
Do you need a motion?
Yeah, we will need a motion to, let's see. Are we hiring? Are we accepting the proposal? Accepting the proposal from the New Hampshire School Board Association? Okay, so we need a motion to accept the superintendent search proposal from the New Hampshire School Board Association.
So moved.
Second.
I have a motion from Leslie and a second from Ed. All those in favor, please say aye.
I
Any opposed, say nay. Okay.
know it feels real.
I mean,
it's
it's,
no.
maybe she'll apply.
Cost
No, I think it's fine, because the contract will be the contract.
Okay. All right, so. All right. Yeah, that does feel,
Yeah, that's all real.
yeah. It also feels like having done the last search, which was very homegrown, it feels very like we're big kids now.
too.
Yeah. Okay, so our next agenda item, COVID updates. As you may have seen in Sydney's update, there isn't a whole lot of this area unless there's been stuff more recently. But in keeping with having this be a continued conversation, we want to make sure we still have it on the agenda so that we can bring up if there's questions or concerns from the board in this area, or if there's things that have come up at the school or the district level.
No. We sent a notice home about 2 staff cases today, but I think that's it so far.
Actually, if I can just ask, as the weather changes and it's getting cold, and we had a 9 a.m. assembly yesterday outside, and it was pretty darn chilly. Thinking about, and it doesn't have to be now, but just thinking about when and if we can have assemblies in the gym without wearing masks.
Yes. Yes. I'm supportive.
I heard about that. 9 a.m.
I was dancing the whole time.
Yeah.
Eliza mentioned how cold she was out there, so.
I mean,
Two
I
sweatshirts on.
don't know of a lot of schools in my sphere that are restricting gatherings anymore or anything like that.
And the kids always have the option to mask if they
Yeah.
feel
Mhm.
comfortable.
What does it currently say? What do we currently have?
So following the CDC guidance, it's completely up to the school discretion, and they would just advise that you follow their local community level, right?
And-
So maybe if we get to community level high, then maybe we would,
We pull it back.
Our
think
policy
something
was
different.
more than 2 classrooms-ish.
that's what it is right now,
Yeah.
although I'm not actually sure where we specifically stand on that, because at the last board meeting, the
We
move
voted
was to
to,
go
right,
with
follow
the
the
CDC guidance,
That's a good point.
right?
Yeah.
So maybe we don't need to do anything other than to say, Kristen.
It's up
Do what you
to
want.
discretion.
Yeah.
Mhm. Yeah, I think that's, we looked at following the CDC guidance. So,
Right.
yeah, I think.
So if, for example, if you have an assembly this winter and the community is at high level transmission, you may decide at that point, we may decide at that point, if we're doing this assembly, it's masked.
But it's up to you.
Mm.
Maybe Sydney too.
Okay, thank you.
And maybe, is that worth like looking at, I was gonna say, is it worth something like giving families a heads up that there's an assembly, so they might want, like, if you want to send a mask.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That kind of a thing. I'm thinking there might be families that are comfortable unmasked in a small classroom, but would want their kid to wear a mask at a
Yeah,
school-wide
absolutely.
assembly, something like that.
Yeah, and again, it's up to Kristen's discretion, I
Yeah.
think.
Thank you.
That is referred to as your happy dance in our car.
When
Mrs.
she's
Reed-
freezing cold.
Mrs. Reed's gonna be doing her happy dance and I'm wearing my shorts. Yep.
I do a lot of dancing in the morning.
You never look blue, so.
Right, because I'm always moving.
Yeah. All right, so our next agenda item are policies. So we are tackling the J section. And so what we have for tonight are policies that we need to bring in as required by law. And
Thank you.
Thank you.
and then also rescinding policies that are found in other locations now.
This is just, we're scratching the surface. There's 92 recommended policies. And we're obviously, I don't like to do that many. I'm more of the less is more with policies, but
Thank you.
this is just the beginning of the cleanup for Jay.
So we'll take, we'll do the first, the JICL, JJJ, JLF, JLDBA, and JLCF, if people have questions on any of those. So we can start with the district internet access for students, which is a new policy required by law. Any questions or comments on that one? Pretty straightforward.
Yeah.
All right, the next one is access to public school programs by non-public charter school and home educated pupils. And this is another new policy required by law.
I guess my question is, if there's a cost associated with these programs, how are those going to be met?
Doesn't matter.
Doesn't.
Well, your question is probably similar to my question that I am talking to the School Board Association with on Thursday, because I just said in my history, there was always a threshold of, maybe no more than half a day or,
Right.
things like that.
Number of credits
So
or,
the way the new law reads, there is no threshold. So I did contact Will Phillips at the School Board Association to see his take on that. And he said, yeah, we've been talking a lot about that here too. We haven't quite figured it out. Which I know I shouldn't laugh, but it's one of those things where the law came in and people didn't kind of think about all the other
Of course not.
side effects. So I have a meeting, I think this is fine for a first reading, but I have a meeting with the School Board Association, I think at 10 on Thursday. And that's right after their group is meeting to talk about it. So I can hopefully give you more information later. I probably sent too many questions to Will because I was just like, well, what if this, what if that?
That's important to ask.
What if it's mid-year? What if it's, elementary is different? At what point do we actually get to request adequacy funding for this student?
Yep.
Should be a percent of the
Behavior
time.
consequences, if they choose not to do state assessments, if they choose not to do, hand anything in. It gets very complicated.
yeah, it seemed like the only limit was if it's 25 or more.
And I put that in.
Oh,
Thank you.
perfect.
Because we really can't. We
Yeah,
we
it's
do
not.
have a capacity limit.
course,
And I
yeah.
added that, just saying, like, we really do have to at least have a number limit someplace.
Yep. That makes sense. I was like, how'd they know? How'd they know 25 is what we can handle?
No,
I should have guessed
that was
that.
me.
For you. All right,
And do we get to say, I'm sorry, you can't be here anymore if you're not following our behavior plan or our, if
Yeah.
you're not
Um,
doing work or if you're.
My question too is, special education services.
Right.
Anything goes.
Yeah.
Anything goes.
okay, so sounds like we'll do a first reading on this and you will come back to us with more information before our second reading of it.
I hope so.
Okie dokie. So then the JJJ-R is the kind of alongside that.
Mhm.
Are there any questions or comments about that one?
Same question,
Yeah,
same
about the
comments.
same,
Perfect.
yeah.
Perfect. Come back with more. All right. So the next one is reporting child abuse or neglect. Any questions?
Yes,
All right.
in the A, statement of policy, I underlined, and I gotta read it to remind myself why I underlined it. Okay. A credential holder is defined in New Hampshire Department of Education rule who fails to report suspected abuse or neglect risks, having action taken by the New Hampshire Department of Education against his or her credential.
It's awkwardly worded.
It is, and
Risks having action. Got it.
The
Yep.
risks, you take a risk that they're gonna pull your credentials.
Right.
and if you
Yeah.
fail to report it,
You may lose your license.
Yeah.
Having neglect and risks next to each other is confusing.
Yeah.
mhm.
Yes. Yeah.
I
'Cause
I
it's
also wonder,
the,
can you be accused of not having reported something when you didn't really, by another individual? It just,
They're emphasizing your obligation pretty much.
well, and that's always been there, but
Yeah.
Usually the general rule is. if
See
you-
something, say
Even
something.
if you sniff it, you report it, let them make the determination.
yeah,
Right.
that often backfires too.
Yes, it does.
Yes, it does.
other pieces on that one, other questions on that one? Okay, then looking at the behavior management and intervention. This is again, new policy required by law.
We did have, I did have Mrs. Reed and our BCBA, Mrs. Brown look over these and they were both fine with it.
Perfect.
It will fit whatever, program it will adapt to whatever programs we're running at the time.
Okay, and then the wellness policy. I had a question on this one, and it wasn't from the change, because the change was only the water bottle
Only
piece, right?
water, yeah.
And so I imagine I missed this the last time we looked at this one, or maybe we talked about it and I forgot. In the community, the plan for measuring implementation and community involvement section. Is it two different wellness committees that it's referring to, or is this the same? Because it talks, so in the plan for measuring implementation, it says the superintendent and principal shall establish a wellness committee that will periodically assess the nutrition and physical activity environment throughout the Grantham School District, review policy implementation, propose measurable targets, blah, 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 blah. And then in the community involvement section, it says the Grantham School Board will establish a wellness committee that will periodically assess the nutrition and physical activity environment throughout the Grantham School District.
It's the same committee.
Is that all the same committee?
Yeah.
Okay, so should the community one say superintendent and principal then? Because I don't remember the board ever having established the committee.
Right. Yes, I think that would be a good change.
It's towards the end.
Okay.
It's like the last section before
Yeah. we don't have-
the legal references.
Got it.
Yeah, right in there. So
Okay.
that first,
So,
so the previous one says the superintendent and principal shall establish a wellness committee.
yeah,
Right.
nice.
And then in this one, it says the Grantham School Board will establish a wellness committee.
and I think what we would put in there, and I'm just gonna kind of type it in while we're going. The Grantham School Board will instruct the superintendent and principal to establish a wellness committee. Because technically, you're just saying that we are going to establish a committee, but this is an important distinction because it's technically like a superintendent committee as opposed to a board committee, which will make a big difference down the road.
Do you want to just take a look at that?
Yeah.
Like those two, the plan for measuring implementation and the community involvement section, the
Sure.
wording for what the committee does is a little bit different between those two sections.
Yeah, I will.
And before our second reading of it,
Okay.
that would be great. And it might be that we don't, it might just roll into one
Right.
Mhm.
one all-encompassing thing. Excellent. Any other thoughts on the wellness committee policy? All right, so we'll do a first reading of policies JICL. So we need a motion to, for the first reading of policies JICL, JJJ, JJJ-R, JLF, JLDBA, and JLCF.
Moved.
Second.
So I have a motion from Leslie and a second from Denise. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, so the next one that's on our list to look at or think about is a policy, which would be JBAB. So we don't have a policy currently, and this is something that Sydney wants to bring forward for us to consider.
Yeah, this is something that's been pretty interesting in terms of how we have an approach to transgender students at GDS. And there are several different approaches that school districts are taking. So one approach is that we would have an actual policy, JBAB, on transgender students that would include sort of any protocols that we might follow. The other option, and I have to tell you that this is the one that I'm in favor of, is that our non-discrimination policy, AC, already has transgender listed, but that the board approves the procedures. Instead of creating a separate policy, you would just you would approve what our administrative or operational procedures are for transgender students. Because I do think that we need to specify some language around that, that will be helpful, but I don't know if we need an actual additional policy. And one of the benefits of not going straight into a policy is that everybody's watching the court cases right now. And so it hasn't gone to, any higher court where we would be able to draw a specific policy from. So I think our best bet would be that this is non-discrimination. It's already covered, but we have procedures.
So we basically add language to the existing policy or add it to like our.
We don't add anything to any policy. We just have basically a procedure that GVS follows for transgender students. And that would be board approved, but something that the whole staff can help create and look at other sample procedures and our approaches to it.
I like
That
that.
makes perfect sense.
It's interesting because everybody's watching the circuit court right now, and 19 out of 20 circuit court cases have erred on protections for transgender students for pronouns, for bathrooms, for locker rooms, for et cetera, but it hasn't just gone to that next level yet.
Denise had shared with me, had sent me a sample policy sort of write up on this from GLAD. It was from GLAD, correct?
GLSEN.
Oh, from Glisten. And I think it has some really good like context setting stuff in it
Yeah.
that I can share with
Yeah.
Sydney or Denise, if you want to share it with Sydney and Kristen,
You mean just. send
just
it
by
to-
email, yeah.
And what I liked about it was that, it's pretty extensive, but it says it's meant to be adaptable to specific needs of your own school district. And, I just feel like we just gotta really watch out for these kids.
Yeah, what I really liked in it is it's more than just a sample policy. It's also like, there's really good definitions, there's really good language, there's really good like considerations, history, that kind of stuff in there too. It isn't just it isn't just a boilerplate policy.
Yeah, no, I would love to see it. And I really do think that this is something that the whole staff should get together and have a discussion about, so that when this comes forward, we're all
So
on
I
the
just
same
send it
page.
to you and you can send it.
That'd be
And then
great.
maybe to the.
Sure.
send it to the board.
Yeah, I think one of the things for me that I think about on this, and I am in total agreement that I think this is a good approach to it, and it feels like a more holistic approach. And I think one of the pieces for me that I want to keep in mind as we move forward with that is that it isn't just about sort of like being cognizant of where it stands like legally and where it stands in terms of like current affairs, but also the message that it sends to families and students who may be going through this process as a family.
Right.
So having something like on paper, sends messages in lots of directions. So it sends messages just to folks who might not agree with it, but it also sends an equally and frankly more important message to a family who's child has just told them that they're transgender.
Mhm.
And the family's looking at how is the school gonna respond to this? And so I think it's really important for us to also keep that experience in mind, because I think sometimes the experience of the folks that are speaking out against these policies is swallowing the voice of the families who are saying like, but we need these resources and we need to know where our school stands. And so I know my only hesitation with not having a like actual policy that we can show that we have is that sort of like very publicly having our commitment to those students and those families. But I think if we have more of that holistic and wraparound approach where we can say like, there's procedures and there's other things that we can show and we can give to families, then that meets some of that need.
Yeah.
That's kind of the push and pull for me around this, is making sure that we are being very open about our, you know, our commitment to our students and our families, so. Okay, so our next section are policies to rescind. These are policies that are in other areas. So the first one is the sexual harassment, which is in the A section now, correct?
Mhm.
The next, any questions about that one? The next one is about bus cameras, which we don't need because Mrs. Reed rides the bus now. Just kidding. Just kidding.
The most crowded bus.
Which is up to date in our E section with our bus policies. Any questions on that one? All right, and then truancy is contained in policy JH. That's the,
Yeah.
All right.
I love rescinding.
Any questions about any of those? All right, so we need a motion to rescind JBAA, JBAA-R, JICC, JICC-R, and JHB. So we right, we have a
Second.
motion from Leslie and a second from Ed. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, excellent. Our next agenda item is the
I'm just,
principal.
I'm
Yeah,
just gonna say
jump
one more
in.
thing about policy,
Yeah.
is that Mrs. Reed has done a lot of work on the dress code policy.
Mm,
So the plan is that I have a first draft that I'm going over, that the committee submitted to me. And then I'm gonna send it out to parents and guardians, and that one will come before you in December. So the community will have like 3 or 4 weeks to look it over for input before you see it.
Great, perfect. All right, so principals report. That was a good segue because it's in there.
I was.
Anything that you would like to add or highlight from your report?
No, I'm gonna submit it as written today.
Excellent. I really liked reading about the professional development day
Mhm.
stuff that you guys did. Sounds like it was a very full day.
It was a very full day and it was almost a gift that our UDL trainer had to postpone because we ended up just packed full anyway. So it was a very good one.
Any questions or comments for Kristen on her report? All right, excellent, thank you.
You're welcome.
And then next up is the superintendent's report. Anything that you would like to highlight or add to your report?
I do. I usually submit mine as written, but I'm gonna switch places. So there are some things that I'm gonna talk a little bit about. Is that we do have interest in the grounds renovation and playground bid. So I'm very excited about that. I'm
Oh,
hoping that you'll be able to select a landscape site contractor at your December meeting. So that's good. Timing is everything, I think.
It took me entirely too long to figure out that the dugouts weren't there. I was like, you're like, what?
That was next on my list.
With,
Well, it's dark, I didn't notice.
and then the like footprint, I thought they were huge. They're like the size of this picnic table and this table, they're so little.
It was funny though. There were 2 girls out at recess who were kind of like looking for where they usually hide. at recess. Dugout's right there, but they were standing next to that area.
Have to get those little those little cats.
Yes, oh my
that
God.
they crawl in.
Yeah,
No, not having hiding places is a gift.
Yeah, it looks so nice and so much bigger
Yes,
and
it
open.
really
Doesn't it make a
does.
difference?
So what,
Except when you're standing there going, what's different?
Were they relocated somewhere or just destroyed? or-
Yeah, so they were out for the construction anyway,
Yeah.
and Toby's been doing a great job of seeing, what we can do along the way. And Newport needed dugouts
that's
for their new
nice.
baseball
Oh,
field.
good.
So we
Oh,
did
cool.
offer them to Grantham Rec
Yeah.
first, and our size did not fit
Yeah.
the
Mhm.
already poured pads at the rec field.
Yeah.
So Newport took them, which I think is also
Great.
great.
Good,
Cool.
nice.
Yes, they didn't want the backstop. We were hoping they would want the backstop too. So
You need
maybe
one at your
somebody else
house.
might want it.
Yeah.
Does anybody need a backstop at their home?
Nope. Nope, that's awesome.
Okay, yep, so I was gonna, dugouts were next on my list.
I'm glad I noticed before you. Is that you're like, I was like, what?
They're gone.
Sitting there in my car, like, used to be in front of me.
The over last weekend, we had a volunteer crew come to pre-stain the boards that are gonna be the ceiling of the pavilion, so those are all stained, and I can also let you know that the pavilion is going up next week. So Yankee Barn has a forklift coming on Monday for sure with their crew, and this is it.
Outdoor
Wow.
assembly.
I know.
Right?
Yeah.
That's good for warm weather.
Yeah.
It's gonna be beautiful next week.
We just need to do a fundraising thing to get Kristen a zip up down suit or something like that.
People's like, just like
I have
sleeping
one.
down.
You should wear it here.
I should.
Fun in the morning.
Okay, so we actually have the date set, so it's happening next
that's
week. I'm very excited about that.
Good.
I did want to say in my report, as you notice, that the media is alive with discussion of failing scores and
Yes.
failing
Yes.
schools and pandemic, et cetera. So I didn't do the deep dive that Kristen and I usually do at budget, presentation time, but I wanted to let you know that Grantham is looking wonderful in terms of staying academically focused and, intent on keeping our kids where they need to be with learning. So I feel pretty, while we all hesitate to, say anything about the test scores, state test scores, I feel really proud of seeing, what came through with our scores this year.
I'm proud of Grantham too, but I have to say, reading these reports just makes me feel like they're looking for an opportunity to do some more stuff.
Yeah.
And I'm very disappointed,
The
rather
blame.
than saying, look at how our kids got through this pandemic.
Mhm.
It's, But I'm very proud of what GBS has been able to come through with.
I mean, not just closing a gap, but, in two of our areas actually having a huge jump. So thank you to everybody at GBS. I did want to also say, Meredith, you probably know the numbers off the top of your head, but Meredith has done a wonderful job with the money that we have from the bond of putting that into some short-term CDs so that we're earning interest off of it. So she negotiated a good rate for considering what the going rates are. So what's our interest rate?
3.25.
3.25, great. So even though we weren't able to start construction, we have those bonds in the bank earning a little bit of money in the meantime.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Good job.
And thank you to Meredith for that. And also, we just got our first tuition list and tuition bill. So it looks like we will probably have about $100,000 available that we had. So we're coming in with, I think, about 8 to 9 fewer students than we had budgeted for. And of course, Brenda and I always go over, we need to know where everybody is, where they go. But it's a combination of private school and homeschooling and moving, someplace else, and not as many move-ins and outs as we've had. So in our tight budget year, it seems like we will have a little bit of a cushion in that tuition line.
And that's with the increase from lab? Is
You
that the
mean with
lab tuition?
That's the middle and high school.
Yeah.
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 So,
Yeah, even with the increase.
even with the increase. Yeah. So that makes me breathe a little bit easier as we're looking at some of the other unanticipated costs that we've had this year.
Yeah.
And again, we're still trying to write a lot of those into grants wherever we can. SR3, as I said, is all allocated, but we are trying for complete transparency. So on our reopening page, you can go in there and you can see exactly every activity for every COVID related grant that we have all spelled out. The state just did the same exact thing. So you can go to any town or district and look at their allocated, budgeted, spent funds. But if you want actual detail, you can just go to our webpage and find it. So that's pretty much it.
Okay, any questions from Sydney on her report?
Cindy, is there any possibility that any more relief money is coming through anymore?
I haven't
grant
heard
money,
anything
nothing?
at all. No. Mm-mm. No.
Federally and statewide.
Things are gonna be
Shut down.
pretty shut down in about 6 days. Well, I guess January 1st.
Is there anything we should do before in the next 6 days, honestly?
Okay. All right, so our next agenda item is the consent agenda. So do we have any changes, questions, anything anyone wants to pull out and look at from the consent agenda?
The trustees of the trust funds report did not come in, so that'll be, you'll need to take that out.
Take that one out. All right, so we'll remove the trustees of the trust fund report. Anything else? Okay, so we need a motion to approve the consent agenda, removing the trustees of the trust fund report. The motion from Leslie and a second from Ed. All those in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed, say nay. All right, excellent. So we will open our second public participation session. And so if anyone has any participation they would like to bring the board at this point of the meeting, you are welcome to do that. Just a reminder, if you are participating, we don't have anybody here in the room to publicly participate with us, but if you're joining us virtually, please remember to type your name and address at the beginning of your comment if you would like to make a public comment during participation. And if it's something that since we're at the conclusion of the meeting, if it's something that the board can answer a question or we can comment on briefly, then we will do that. We'll wait a couple of minutes to see where we get.
Do have some participation online. So if anybody at home would like to talk, you can raise your hand or type in the chat.
And no pressure if you don't want to. We're not like. I will, while we're waiting, since we don't have anybody in the room that's going to speak, if anybody is, while you're typing, feel free to type. But I did the School Board Association training on the public participation. And it was really good. And I think one of the best, the key takeaway for me that I took from it is being that the type of participation that we have, remaining as neutral as we can in our policy about it and our response to it, which means if we expect folks to not have negative comments or negative things that they're identifying personally identifiable information. So if we're saying you can't bring a complaint or something where you're naming the person, then we also can't allow people to do that with praise, which is a tricky, so you have to be like viewpoint neutral in that. So if someone provides public comment where they want to express, praise or happiness or call out a good thing that happened and they're doing that by name, we have to not allow that in the same way that we would not allow criticism or a negative comment. And so reminding people that if there are things that they want to express, they can do that in a way that is anonymous, or there might be, a different channel that you can incorporate that into your, like how we had previously had the opportunities to celebrate our team. Maybe that's something that the board would decide to do every so often in their meetings, would be to have like a time where there's, recognition or celebration or something like that, but to not, to remember that saying someone's, personally identifiable information and saying something positive about them is also just as unallowed as a negative thing, which I was like,
Neutral.
good
Public
reminder for public participation. Yep. Yeah. With the exception if they wanted to come and say nice things about you.
They can actually, because
Yeah.
they can say negative things about me.
Exactly.
Yeah.
You're the exception, or us,
Anyone.
right? Yeah.
I was gonna put in my oral report too, that Harper is officially certified as therapy dog.
Yay!
How'd she feel?
So proud.
She's okay.
No.
2 nights before the exam for certification, she got about 100 quills in her face.
But
Aw,
she's
she met a
certified.
new friend.
Mhm. Yes. And apparently, from what the vet said, she will not learn not to make that friend.
Nope.
again.
No,
They
they
do
do not
not
learn.
figure that out.
All right. Okay, I don't see anything coming in, so we are going to close public participation for tonight. Do we have a non-public session?
I don't.
Okay, I don't either.
Oh, and I was all ready to write.
Denise, take
You're
that
so
out.
prepared. You're all ready for next time. See?
No,
Yeah,
I
just
have to
keep
get
it.
a new paper. I put today's date.
Oh,
Oh.
lessons learned.
James.
Next time, put the date last.
Okay.
All right, so unless I don't think we have anything else tonight. Quickly, our next meeting is December 6th. And we have a few items that we know we'll be bringing forward from this meeting to that meeting. The board can look for some information about job description and more information from the School Board Association about moving our search forward to the next step between now and then. So with that, we need a motion to adjourn.
Second.
I have a motion from Leslie and a second from Denise. All those in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed, say nay. All right, so we are adjourned at 8:31. Thank you. Thanks, everybody.